sky. Don't let it all go passing by. You know you only get one life.
Edmund Burke said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Today's episode of the Bare Essentials podcast carries a heavy but vital weight. My guest is Dr. John A. King. He is an award-winning poet, author, speaker, and activist. He is the founder of Give Them a Voice, a nonprofit dedicated to raising awareness, providing education, and leading training around human trafficking and trauma recovery. He starred in two multi-award winning documentaries and has been recognized as one of the top 10 leaders worldwide in the fight against human trafficking. But his work is about more than recognition or titles. It's about refusing to stay silent. It's about shining light in dark places and standing with those who've been ignored, silenced, or broken. Today, we'll explore his story, his mission, and what it means to live well, even in the aftermath of trauma. Now, without further ado, let's welcome to the show Dr. John A. King. Dr. King, how are you? Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, g'day, Charlie. Nice to be here, mate. Appreciate it.
I really, really appreciate it. And for the audience, I want to make sure I refer to Dr. King appropriately. As we move forward, though, he gave me permission. I'm going to refer to him as John.
Yeah.
So it's Dr. John A. King. If you don't know who he is, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot today. And hopefully you'll be following him as much as I'm looking forward to following him after this. So with that being said, John, would you mind giving an introduction of yourself?
Oh, mate, where to on that one? So I am an Indigenous Australian. I came to the US, the first plane out of Australia on United after 9/11. And now here we are, September 11th, 225. And I came to America by choice, man, because as goes America, so goes the rest of the world, economically, militarily, spiritually. And I just felt like I wanted to get in the game, and I'm so grateful to be here. Yeah, love it, man. Love it.
Yeah, well, John, I think a good place to start would be this, and doing some prep for this interview. So I think is here's where I'd like to start.
Sure.
You've been pretty open about your own story and how it shaped your own mission.
Yep.
What was the moment when you realized that, and it's very topical at this point in time, realized that silence wasn't an option? When you realize, you know what, I need to step up and step forward and speak, and not just for yourself, but for others.
So I was sexually abused as a child by the people that raised me and by their friends. So we'd call that trafficking today. So I had recall of that event back in 2008. Total cataclysm, John-ageddon is what I call it. And it was a total collapse of my life, recall of what happened. And that recall went on for a period, on and off for 7 years. Sometimes it still happens. So I lost everything there. First marriage, estranged from my kids, my business, my consulting thing, all that sort of stuff all happened. It totally imploded. And I'm going through this process trying to figure out how to right myself, how to get my feet back under me again. And I realized there was no books on the sexual abuse of men, no books on female predators, nothing really dealing with any of that sort of stuff. And it was like, I'm going to have to create that for myself.
Mm.
And my journey started when I thought, all right, I need to learn this for me, because if I later on in life can help one man turn it around for himself, help one person go from being victor to overcomer, help one person be able to take whatever trauma it is in their life, whether it's physical, militarily, law enforcement, and get their mindset back into a performance mindset, then it's been worth the work. So that's really what happened to me in 2008 on a Thursday, mate. I had total recall, and I only allowed myself to turn victim once. From that point on, it's been okay. I'm going to solve this thing and beat this thing.
Amen to that. I mean, first, let me say, obviously, I've had others on the show that similar situations. It really fires me up. I hate hearing it.
Yeah.
but I like having guys like yourself on to see what I like to call the recovery and who you are now. And I love it when I hear that you're not playing the victim anymore. And I think what you're doing is needed. And I think it's someone like you with just your attitude and your approach that I think you give other people who are suffering from this or experience this. John, I think you give them hope. And I think this is such a worthwhile mission. And I think I read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the founding, give them a voice. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah, that's our foundation, and we deal with anti-human trafficking and trauma recovery. We were involved in the tail end of the Epstein case, and the guy that took over from him, Peter Nygaard. So all that stuff out there about Pizzagate and how it's a conspiracy, it's not. It's all true. It's all true. All the concerns about Epstein are all true. Nygaard's all true. It's just that we are living in the time and age where we're planted with this incredible opportunity to change the world, and it's going to take some time and commitment to do that. These people have been caught out. They know they've done it. We know they've done it, and this is across the board now. There is just such an opportunity for men to rise up and step for everyone, but I really believe particularly men to rise up and start to reclaim some of the ground that's been taken from us and help lead and steward and protect our nation and other people from some of the evil that's just afoot.
So, John, what you just said there, and I think what I have the hardest time understanding, there's a lot there I want to try to unpack, but one of the things I have the hardest time understanding is this. Why did we, not you, me, right? Just in general, why did we as men just sort of sit back and let it get taken from us?
Um, that's a big question. There's lots of things. I think we came out. So I'm 62. So I understand that 62 years ago the world was a different place. But as a husband and a father, my women in my life have never been oppressed, never been threatened, been given every opportunity that's about, have been protected and provided for. And I think what's happened is that shift has changed. That generation did the work, and there has been an emancipation of women, and there has been equality that needed to be addressed. But we're in a generation now where it's a backlash that's happening. And I think what's happened is men have been so beaten down for so long. If you think of it, it's in the lyrics of songs. It's in every movie. Every movie and every TV show is a weak, bumbling male fool that is being outdone by everybody else. So you keep on saying those things over and over again. And what happens is that what happened back in the 50s and 60s, where women were represented some way and couldn't rise up, when all we've done is swung the pendulum back the other way. And guys have to be comfortable with who they are. And we've tried so hard to destroy what masculinity is and to be a man that we've got a whole generation of young boys growing up who don't know what it is to be men. They don't have fathers to model. It's like a line out of Fight Club. Generation of boys raised by women who don't know what it is to be men.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's really hurting our younger generations, and I worry about that. I really do. I worry that, I'm a little bit younger than you, but like for me, I really get concerned as, God willing, I'm 70, 80 years old. Like I walk around now with my head on a swivel, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I could be a constant target
Yeah.
outside, neighbor, anywhere, and I just think it's sad. And it never used to be that way. And I mean, I'm fortunate. I feel like, I come from a home where, it was more of that typical roles, back then, right? My mom thought it would, and my dad worked two jobs because he thought it was important that my mom was there
Yeah.
for us. And, I think it helped a lot. And I listen, I don't think it hurt either that my mom understood too what growing up and having to be a man meant. For example, I remember going in the house one day after getting my ass beat by a bully. I thought she was going to coddle me. She cleaned me up and sent me back outside. Right. So, like,
Exactly.
that
She
was it.
married
Right.
that guy, brother,
Yeah.
and she was going to produce that son.
Yeah, and she literally she said it don't matter, you're going back out, and I did, right? I did,
Yep.
So I look back at my parents with a lot of gratitude. I think, I'm fortunate, and
Yeah,
I
that's
always like
great.
to say that. So I think, and correct me again if I'm wrong, but I read that you're recognized as one of the top 10 leaders worldwide in anti-human trafficking. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. That was back in 2017. We were nominated that, and that was the first year that the Department of Homeland Security recognized that the recognized boys and men as being victims of trafficking. Up until that point, the only talk was about women and girls. And the funny thing with that is about 45% of all victims, between 45 and 50% of all victims of human trafficking are male.
Mm.
And between 40 and 45% of all perpetrators of human trafficking are female. So if you're looking for the white guy trafficking the black girl, you're missing the Asian woman trafficking the white boy. This is a humanity issue, not a gender issue.
Yeah, I think what you just said there, the more I look into it, I think it's a humanity issue. That's a great way to say it. I don't think it's really confined to gender or race at this point. I think it's just it anybody susceptible to it at this point in time. John, you think that honor though, right? Did you notice that did that carry any significant weight and additional responsibility? At least did you create additional responsibility from that honor?
Um, no, no, not really, mate. I don't think I'm that sort of guy. I didn't go looking for it, and I was in the middle of a premiere for a documentary they just did on my life, and I was up in California at the time, and someone in the crowd said, "Hey, you got this," and it's like, "Oh, okay, that's good, I think." Like, okay, I can give it to someone like you, and it's okay, it's some credibility. But for me, it was like, all right, I'm up here to California, do this thing, and on Monday, I'm going to be back in Texas doing that thing that I was doing.
Mm.
And so it's an honor, like all honors, but really, man, it's like you got to get up and get on the field tomorrow because that's when it counts.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said that better. I think all of us, we have an obligation to every day put our best foot forward, and obviously we talked about this a little before we started. Try to make this a better place, right, John? I
I
definitely think,
agree. I
yeah.
think we do. It's it's like every day we rise with an opportunity. Are we going to better ourselves and better the world and better our family, or are we going to um, damage it? And that is an internal choice that only an individual can make.
Mm.
Some days there are people who get up with such a degree of self-loathing that they want to take that out on everybody else close to them. And we can only hope and pray that they get an internal revelation that there is a better way to live.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about having ideological, philosophical, or theological disagreements. I actually encourage those. And but what we don't want is what we've seen lately for the last probably 6 or 7 years is the inability to have a conversation anymore. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And I know when I started the podcast, that was kind of my goal was, try to do some good, but really get those conversations out there and show people that by having discussions, it's an exchange of ideas, and we're not always going to agree on everything. There's times we may not agree on anything, but we should still try to come to a happy medium, I'll say. And
Yeah.
I think though that's another skill set of yours that I think really helps for you. You've written books, poetry, been part of documentaries, like you said. How has that storytelling, whether it's through the words, through a documentary, art, how does that help people better understand trauma, especially human trafficking, in ways that maybe facts alone can't?
I, I saw the impact of it when I was doing the premiere for Stopping Traffic. So these group of people had approached me. I was a bit of a unicorn. I was male. I'd been abused and I was prepared to talk about it. I was writing poetry and publishing it online. And I was a lock-in. I couldn't leave. I had a chronic stutter that made people embarrassed to turn and they turned away from me, all that sort of stuff. And I started this thing online, reaching out and trying to just help. I wasn't doing anything other than publishing poetry. hoping that if someone read it, it might encourage another man who may be having a challenge out there. And I remember we were in Boston, and this for the one of the premieres of the pre-showing before we went to Hollywood for the premiere. It was at a film festival. Audience of about 320 people, 330 people. And they did the thing and they had me stand up at the end to ask questions at the end. Brother, there was probably 110, 120 men that came down at the end. And they just wanted to hug me and hold my hand and say, thank you for sharing the story. This happened to me. Now, that's in a crowd of 320, 330 people. They had daughters with them, wives with them, girlfriends with them, and they'd never, ever told anybody. And in that moment, and I dreaded seeing that film. You know, I hated every time I saw it, and I still does. It makes it very difficult days afterwards for me to watch that documentary. But being able to see the impact that not just having a story, but walking through into living a positive, full life, the impact that that can have, and being able to prepare to share about that process, well, that was life-changing for me as much as anybody else in the room. And I realized, okay, this is a thing, man. I've never prayed why. I've only ever asked that he would turn all things around for good. And people ask me what my doctorate is. It's in theology. And I tell them it's into turning shit into fertilizer, because that's really what I've seen happen. Scraping all that stuff together and something beautiful seems to be growing out of it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think people that listen will hear that, and that's kind of the goal, right, John, is that people hear your story, hear your words, and it's somebody that we might catch that happened to them. They haven't shared it yet. So hopefully this is a way that they'll open up about it, as opposed to suffering in silence, which I think is still too prevalent with men, especially.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about, um, because I think this is misunderstood, and I don't know if somebody would look at you potentially and think about this, or it would come to mind. But when it comes to complex PTSD, I think it's often misunderstood or minimized. From your perspective, what do you think the biggest misconceptions are about it? And then what do you wish more people would understand?
So post-traumatic stress, after there's a stressful event, um, post-traumatic stress disorder, trauma. So after trauma, there's a stressful period. If that period's under 6 months, it's just you had a car crash, you got beat up, maybe you were raped, something happened, because a lot of people respond differently. But when it gets into after that 6 months period, then it becomes a disorder. It's something that's long. Now, we associate PTSD with military and police, but actually, PTSD is literally the stress that happens after a trauma. Complex is the diagnosis that's attached to it, because it is a complex way to do it. A lot of it comes from being entrapped, kidnapped, a hostage situation, prolonged sexual abuse, and don't forget, you can also have PTSD in military. I work with a lot of very elite police officers and military people, and they're pipe hitters, but their problem, they have PTSD, but their issue isn't what happened in the service. The issue is that they had a childhood that they decided that you'll never mess with me and my again, and I'll become a hard man. But you can't get good fruit off a bad tree. They're unable to talk about their childhood because they're going to lose their benefits and their health insurance. That's literally why they don't. So we've got some people, and we're talking a very large percentage of these alpha type guys have this problem. We've got a large percentage of guys up here that are under the umbrella of PTSD, but it's a very complex thing that happens. So really complex is just the nature of the fact that there are many different facets that have caused this stress to happen post a trauma.
Interesting. I like the way you explained that. It's valuable to hear, because there was a couple things in there that I know for myself I never really heard or thought about. I think that helps clear up for a lot of people that have a misconception. I think that's helpful, John, and I appreciate you walking us through it that way. Part of that, I think, is recovery. So I want to talk about your Phoenix Collective a little bit.
Sure.
What
Love to, man.
what tools or practices have you found that you would say are the most transformative for those people living with trauma?
So I would say it's taken me about 15 to 16 years to say that I'm now comfortably in recovery. So, and I think that we don't allow ourselves that time, particularly with the degree of trauma that I suffered and the very prolonged trauma I suffered as a child. Um, and it cost two or three hundred thousand dollars to get there. So I was in a position where I could afford and have the time to be able to do that. Um, and so what we tried to do with the Phoenix Collective was take all that and put it into a transformative 18 months. So we've taken all the lessons that I learned because I've written about 27 books. So
Mm.
during this period, I was an avid writer as I was assimilating information. And so we've taken all this material and we've put it in a course to do it. So for your people today, here's just some thoughts. And I've got something for them I want to give your listeners when we end today. Um, Here's some thoughts for your people. The 3 by 5 rule. Find three things that you can spend 5 minutes on each and do them every day. It's not the big changes that make a difference, it's the small, consistent changes. So for me, that 3 by 5 is a mindfulness, breath work, and an authenticity check.
Mm.
And I try to do that. My commitment is to do that every day, but I'm human and sometimes I couldn't be bothered. I wake up irritable. So, but I try and do those three things: mindfulness, breath work, and an internal integrity and authenticity check. And that sort of writes me for today. The first thing always is I'm grateful I woke up because
Mm.
that's a miracle for me. And I'm grateful I'm loved. I have a woman who loves me and a house, 4 chickens and a dog. You know, my life is complete. And so that's very important. And there's some other things that people can do to reset them. They can do sitting in the sun, red light therapy, feet on the ground, getting in touch with the frequency of the earth. Hug a tree, man. I'm a 6 foot, 230 pound tree hugger. What can I tell you, old rugby man? Cold shower for resilience and relentlessness. High fat, high protein diet. I mean, those things alone, just by cutting out food coloring and excessive sugar and processed food, will probably solve depression and anxiety in 70% of your audience.
Mm.
So I think things like that, they're the sorts of things that I've found along the way that have been helpful on a physical level. So that's one. Then mentally, the game's in the head. The game is in the head and in the heart. So the heart has a memory, it has a physical memory. And the game's in the head. So between the head and the heart, I've got to take care of my body and I've got to get my head and my heart right. And I've got to do that. And the third aspect is spirituality. I'm a Christian man. My faith's very important to me because it's my bedrock. When the rest of the world is shaking and shattering, my belief and understanding that I'm secure in my faith is being fundamental and essential to my recovery process.
Mm.
And so I'm not subscribing that everyone should be a Christian, although, you know, I'd have a conversation, a beer and a cigar with anybody about that. But this sense of understanding that the Creator loves you, that there's someone bigger than you looking after you and is for you, is absolutely paramount to come back from the edge of destruction.
Mm. There's a lot there that I think people will take value out of, and John, I mean, my recovery was a little, obviously it was different, way different than yours, right? It wasn't what you went through. Mine was my own doing as far as my weight and my unwillingness to kind of just do the right things, right? But some of the things you mentioned there, I can kind of remember my own journey needing to do some of that. Couple things that came to mind was the processed food, the cold showers. That was stuff that still today is things I'm constantly on the
Yeah,
lookout for to do. So no, I think you gave a lot of valuable tips there. As a matter of fact, I already know that'll be one of the parts that I clip out of this to replay for people in a little
good.
short form. That was good stuff. So John, for anyone who wants to support trauma survivors,
Sure.
uh, what are the common mistakes that we make, and what are things we can try to do to make a difference?
Um, don't try and understand it. Like, people don't understand what it's like to be raped for 12 years. You know, who's going to? I don't want anyone to have to understand that. So I think sometimes people who have been through or struggling with things, they don't necessarily unpack it. They just want to understand that you're going to see them trying, or at least listen to when I sit and talk with some of my military mates, I don't know what it's like to take a hatchet to a guy in the middle of Afghanistan because your life is on the line and you're fighting tooth and I don't understand that. He doesn't understand what it's like to be anally raped because you didn't tidy your room. So we sort of meet in the middle and say, I don't want your crap. You don't want my crap. Why don't we just talk about working on our crap and what can we do to get forward? And I think anyone who's suffering trauma, if they're prepared to open up to you, number one, keep your confidence. Because you break that confidence, they're either going to kick you in the nuts or they'll never talk to anybody again, not just you, but they won't take a risk on opening up. And that's where it gets into a suicide ideation and a range of other things. So be a man, keep your word. If you gave the words, you're going to keep the confidence, keep your confidence. Number two, just listen. Number three is women talk face to face, men talk shoulder to shoulder. So women will go and have coffee with a girlfriend and talk. And they're great. And they'll unpack life and everything else. Guys, you want to go for a walk. You want to sit and watch the footy. You want to barbecue. You just think about the little treasures and gems of conversation you've had standing around the grill, fighting for the tongs, for supremacy. Or sitting on the couch watching a game. And you go, how's your wife? Yeah, good. How's the kids? Yeah, good. Nah, got a bit of problem with the youngest. That is that little microsecond you've got where a guy's opening up and he wants to have a conversation with you. And it's always in a side-by-side aspect.
It's interesting. I never thought about that, the whole shoulder to shoulder, but as you were saying it, I was picturing that. John, you think one thing I've noticed, you mentioned it, that little microsecond that we have. I sometimes feel like the mistake that's made is we take that microsecond as our own opening and bring it back.
Well said. Well said.
Do you see that? Like, I think that to me over the years is what I've learned the best. I had a bad habit myself. I would do that. Lately, though, I'm more, if I'm speaking to somebody like this podcast, I want to try to make it totally about them. It's not about me.
That's a great insight and that's a great attitude. I'm just thinking because I know what it's like when you're so desperate to help someone. You go, yeah, look, I understand this is what's happening in my life. Maybe what it can be if you find yourself going, I understand this is what's happening in my life, you then pause and go, talk to me about that. Talk to me about what's happening in your life. Or you take that beat. And sometimes we feel we miss a beat, like someone will say something to you, then it'll go on 15 or 20 seconds, and you'll think, man, I did hear that. And now there's that at distance, and you don't know what to do. It literally, if you go, hang on, hey mate, listen, you just said something about the kids. What's going on? And be authentic. Authenticity to me is probably the most important thing I have in any of my relationships. And if I've got someone I can go to and talk to about something, it's very important that that's an authentic conversation. And I think even if we miss a moment, and maybe you thought about it when you're home and you got home and go, you know what, I think Charlie was trying to tell me something. And you pick up the phone and say, hey mate, listen, don't send a text because he's going to blow you off. Pick up the phone, say, hey, listen, mate, look, you said this about the kids. I missed it. I'm sorry. What are you doing tomorrow afternoon? I want to have a beer with you. And just close it out then. Then you're setting expectations of time. And what they will do is they'll take it and we'll do what we men do. We put it in a top box and we put it aside, and we'll actually be fine now because we're going to get to tomorrow at 3 p.m. and we'll have a beer, a coffee or a pipe or something and have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable because I think as men, especially what I've seen lately is that if you're the man that says something like that, you're 50-50 when you say it. There's part of you that wants somebody to respond.
Yeah.
There's as much of you that you hope they don't hear it or they don't respond. You just you're always dreading it. And I think if we don't take that opportunity to say, oh, we heard you and we want to have that discussion, I think it's extremely easy for men to just shut it back down and hope. I think sometimes, John, that's what a lot of guys kind of want. They would rather shut it back down than maybe have to talk about it. So you get that really, really small window, like you said.
And I think you've really nailed something, mate, is that I feel something going on. I'm not comfortable with it. I know I really should talk to someone about it. So I'm going to try it, and I really don't want it to happen, even if it's just a subconscious. And I'll give it a go. And if it doesn't happen, I can go, I can tick that box. Yeah, I tried to talk to Charlie about it, but it didn't work.
Mm.
So, I did my, it's like, well, it's different.
Yeah, no, it really, really is. So I'm sure, and there's probably someone listening to us right now. If someone right now listening feels trapped in
Yeah.
silence, fear, trauma, what would you want them to hear from this conversation from us directly right now?
So, so I started something called the Phoenix Collective when we touched it on it, and it's a supportive environment for people that want to develop a performance mindset with the aim of overcoming difficulties in life. And we started a program because I started to do a lot of these podcasts, and people needed something, and so we started something called the Mind Fire Challenge, which is an opportunity. It's about valued at about $450. We give it away for free, or a buck or something like that.
Mm,
And they can go in there, and it's like a starter kit for how to start to address trauma issues in your life. And I would think that's a great place to start.
mm,
I've got a book that I did. That's my agent's shopping that to publishers at the moment. It was self-published. It's going to come out again, and I'll come back when that comes out, and we'll do a book release on his show.
mm.
We'll do a virtual unveil or whatever it is.
That'd be great.
And but what I've got in that course is something called the Phoenix Foundation course, and it's a 12-week program that basically takes you through 15 years of recovery. And the reason I did that, mate, is because I was getting too many inquiries and I was out of time,
Mm,
and I had to find a way to multiply myself. And what I'm so grateful for is we're seeing lives transformed. And what took me 15 years, as I said before, is now we're seeing take 18 months.
mm.
And it's just, I mean, like, seriously, man, like, it makes
That's
me very, very happy. Very happy.
what I'll take away from that is I could just see literally your eyes, literally when you spoke about that, I could just see the gratitude and how much that means to you. And I love seeing when someone's mission, their work is they're just grateful that it's doing good for others. That's great to see, John.
Well, thank you, brother.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
no, it's really, really good to see. So I'll kind of ask you to end with this a little bit. Looking ahead, and I know right now we're in a bit of a spot where this world there's a lot of bad going on, but what gives you hope, John, especially when it comes to trauma recovery, fight against trafficking? And I wanted to ask you, what role do you believe individuals play, not just organizations?
Um, so I mentioned before we kicked off, every second Saturday I do this thing called Man Church. And this second Saturday, I'm starting with that shot from the opening of Boondock Saints. The brothers are in the church, they walk up there, and they decide that the only evil will prosper when good men do nothing. So the title of my sermon or my discussion is What Happens When Good Men Do Nothing. And we lost our way because as good men, we did nothing. We felt that we had to be tolerant when things were intolerable and unacceptable. We felt we couldn't speak out because then we were prejudging ourselves because we wanted someone else's approval. And we've got to a place now where it's okay to kill a public debater. And that's what happened. You might not have liked Charlie Kirk's political views, his religious views, but the guy he was very smart, but he was tolerant and open to a chat with anybody from any way of life. And I think when we allow these small things to happen over time, then we end up with that frog in the kettle scenario.
Mm,
And that's where we are. So, are we looking for a cataclysmic thing that we can turn the whole thing around? It ain't going to happen. It's taken us 2 or 3 decades to get here. It's going to take us a little time out. But it starts every day with a single decision that you will not compromise on. I will not compromise. Whatever those things that are important to you, I'm not going to compromise. I won't stand in that conversation. I won't allow that to come across my TV. I won't pay for that product. I won't eat that food, if it's a health thing. And if we just understand, I'm a pilot. So when you take off, 2% doesn't sound far, but if I'm off by 2 degrees, by the time I get 20 or 30 miles up, I've got to make a major course change. And the thing is, you learn when you're flying, well, you can do that, or you can just do this again. So what I would encourage every one of your listeners is that tomorrow when they get up, they do their 3x5, whatever those 3 things are they do for 5 minutes. And when their authenticity check, when they're checking their personal integrity, they go, what's one thing? What's one thing that's really important for me to do? Just do
So
one thing.
kind of getting chills though, because today I told you before we started, and I'll own up right now to the audience. When I woke up this morning, my head, I did not want to come on here today with Dr. King. I did not think I was in the mind frame to do it. And I quickly got out of that and said, no, that's not what's going to happen. No, I'm not going to be silent. I want to come on here. I want to bring good energy. I can't wait to talk to Dr. King. And I'm grateful that I did. And it's men like Dr. King here that help guide all of us as we continue through this journey. And like I said, Dr. King, John, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And let's just end with this. Where can people follow you? What's coming out? Where should they be
Sure.
looking for you?
Go to the website, drjohnaking.com, and you'll see a range of different things that we're doing. Click on the Mindfire Challenge, and you'll be enrolled for the next thing, the end of September. Come on, hop on, out free to your audience. I've got 2 books coming out. One's called Sins of the Father, which looks at the VA corruption and military sexual trauma. So my agent's got that. And another one called Rats and Rain, which is about human trafficking and governmental and corruption. So they're the 2 fiction novels, and deal with it. Living World with Trauma is being shopped for publishers. So you'll know all about those because I'll get back to you. So if people want to follow me on social, Dr. John A. King, website, drjohnaking.com. And I'd love to connect with your audience, man. Be great.
Yeah, I hope they do, John. I know I love on these episodes where I kind of know quickly that I've connected with someone that I'll continue to stay in touch with and connect with. And I'm not saying this because I'm sitting across from you via a Zoom through the computer. I respect you and what you're doing, and
thanks,
kudos to you and that mission. And I am here. If I can ever be of assistance to you, please let me know. And for everyone who tunes in, I know depending when you're watching this, it's not been a great couple days here in the US, but you know what? We continue to keep moving forward and we have to do better. So thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye. That conversation was definitely difficult, but it was much needed, especially in light of some of the current events happening here in the United States, specifically the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I think today what we learn is that Dr. John A. King's life and work, it reminds us that silence is not neutral. It's a choice. And when we choose silence, evil wins ground. But when we choose to speak, when we act, when we give voice to the voiceless, we remind the world that hope is louder than fear. If today's conversation moved you, I encourage you to learn more about Dr. King's work and his nonprofit. Give them a voice, because awareness is only the first step. Real change comes when we act. Thank you again for listening to the Bare Essentials podcast. Until next time, dare to roar.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.